I think if I could wave a magic wand, the partnership model, that should go away. I don't think makes sense, really. People don't want to work 10 to 15 years before they, get the payoff. They don't want that debt of retiring out the older partners. I mean, that's why all these merger happens. Those young people are smart. Why do we take on that debt?
This episode of the Earmark Podcast is sponsored by Jirav. Jirav delivers an all-in-one budgeting, reporting, and forecasting platform that empowers firms of all sizes to grow by saving countless hours, enabling you to provide exceptional client advisory services. Whether you're just starting out on your financial planning and advisory journey or want to optimize your existing practice, Jirav was built for you. Later, I'll share a special offer for anyone who's ready to learn more. If you'd like to earn CPE credit for listening to this episode, visit earmarkcpe.com, download the app, take a short quiz, and get your CPE certificate. Continuing education has never been so easy. And now, on to the episode. Welcome to another episode of the Earmark Podcast. I'm your host, Blake Oliver, and joining me today is Rita Keller. Rita is a nationally known CPA firm management consultant, speaker, and author. She is a former shareholder and chief operating officer of a large, successful regional CPA firm and has over 35 years hands-on experience in the management, marketing, technology, and administration of a successful firm. She played a key role in growing the firm from 11 people to over 125 team members with 3 offices. Rita, welcome to the Earmark Podcast.
I'm Blake. Delighted to be here. I love to talk.
Well, I'm eager to talk to you because I'm a non-traditional CPA, and
Okay.
I had sort of the reverse experience of, I think, most accountants who go to school for accounting, go work in often a large firm, and then perhaps make their way to a smaller firm, and then maybe even start their own at some point, right? That
True.
tends to be the way it goes, right? You learn at the big firm, and then you go do your own thing, or you maybe work in a regional firm, smaller firm. And so I did the opposite, where I started my own firm, having never worked in one before. And we were, we were doing the whole cloud accounting thing. We were doing fixed fees. I didn't know any better. And so for me, I encounter a lot of resistance to the things that I found to be successful in my firm. Not like hourly billing, a great example, right? And just management style, management techniques. I'm just flabbergasted why some of these practices are still in place when we know there's a better way, or at least I feel like there is. So I can't understand it because I didn't live it, but you lived it. So I'd love to talk about that, and I guess just so that we have some context, right? Like you started in this small firm, you grew it from 11 to 125 team members, and you became the COO of that firm. How did you get your start in accounting?
Well, very simply, I needed a job. I had taken a break from working to have my son, so I was off for about 3 or 4 years, and I got the itch to go back to work. Prior to that, I worked in Alcoa in the accounting department at a local manufacturing plant near my home, and got my first taste of accounting in that setting, which is so different, than public accounting. I didn't know any CPAs. I didn't know what they did. Didn't have any relatives or any background in that at all. And I got a call from a high school friend that said, we're looking for something. We heard you were looking for a job, because I wanted to go back to work in administration somewhere. So I went and interviewed with a CPA firm and was hired. I always say it's the S word that we don't say anymore. It's a bad word, secretary. You don't say secretary anymore. I was hired as the administrative assistant to a managing partner of a 9-10 person firm. So being that secretary to the managing partner, I learned how to run the firm, everything because he ran the firm. He made most of the decisions. He had a couple partners, and I learned under him. Old school guy, started at Deloitte and Touche, I think it was, and then went out, like you mentioned earlier when we were talking, bought a small practice in a smaller city, had his own firm. He was very traditional, very strict, very focused on process and procedures, which isn't not what I have experienced as I've talked with other firms. But he knew how he wanted things done, and we all marched the line. He was a dictator, more or less. That's how they were back then. This is 35 years ago, 35, 40 years ago. And I learned so much from him, and he was so encouraging to me. You could make a huge mistake and he would talk you through it and counsel you. But if you put the paperclip the wrong direction, he would be irate. Just little things would bug him. So he was my first mentor, I guess, and encouraged me to, at that time, I went ahead and got the designation certified professional secretary. You had to take a 2-day exam, and it was a big deal. He paid for all that, paid for my study materials, paid for all of that, and very encouraging. So I think a lot of my progress is because I've had good role models and good mentors. I mean, I do a lot of speaking and consulting about mentoring in CPA firms. It's so important. And so when it came time to retire, he tapped a young gentleman on the shoulder, and he had 2 partners. And the older one of the 2 thought he was going to be the next managing partner, but surprise, he picked the younger one. When that young man took over is when I got the title firm administrator. It was just coming into vogue back then. Law firms have had legal firm administrators for like 100 years, but accounting firms didn't have them. So that's when it first started, and that's when the CPA Firm Management Association, now that is an organization for firm administrators and managing partners, it came into being, and I joined that. That also helped me progress. And so when this young guy took over, 32 years old, and I became firm administrator, we just had this desire to be better, bigger and better. We outgrew our small city and opened an office in Dayton, Ohio, a much larger city nearby. We had some clients there. We kind of went in there cold, which is a big mistake. Don't open an office cold. It's much harder. And then we found a merger candidate, and we doubled our size. And then we found another and another. So we really grew by acquisition. So I went through 5 acquisitions in all those years at the firm. So I learned the association that I belonged to started asking me to tell us how you did this or tell us how you did that. So I started speaking, and I got invited to the Missouri MAP Conference. You've probably never heard of that. It was back in the 80s. It was the premier management conference for CPAs, and it attracted people from all over the country. They somehow heard about me and asked me to come and speak, picked me up in a limousine at the airport. I was very impressed. It was like first class back then. So there I met a wider audience, and it grew. And then I started being interviewed, and I wrote some articles for the Practical Accountant and some of the things that are gone now. And I loved it. I loved the challenge of trying new ideas, because I had the first word processor in our firm. The firm, when I joined it, already had a computer. Way back then, it was a big machine, with big round discs that they stuck in. And we did our own in-house 1040s, computerized, So we were always anxious to try the new technology. And the partner group, to me, which is unusual, what I've seen in recent years, they wanted to change. We want to be leading edge, not bleeding edge. So we would learn from other firms. And I was sort of because I was speaking and networking with other CPA firms, I'd bring back ideas, and I'd find mentors. If I bumped into someone, I tell people now, if you meet someone who you think they really have it all together, get to know them, they'll be your mentor. And I did that throughout my career. When I would hear speakers, I went to the Indiana MAP conference. Most states had one back then. I know they have one up in Massachusetts now, Connecticut. I think they have a Northeast one. I went to the Indiana MAP conference. This was in the 80s. there were probably 200, 250, two women, me and another lady. Two women was all that was there.
Two women
Uh,
out of 150 attendees.
oh, yeah, probably more than
Mm.
150. And it was managing partners of firms. It was partners that come to the MAP conference. And I met a speaker there and I introduced myself to him. And every time I heard a speaker that was a management consultant, I would introduce myself and they would answer my questions, then I could email them. So I built a network of other consultants, which also helped the firm. And we hired a lot of them. We had Alan Colton do our retreat. We had Sam Allred. We had Bill Reeve. You probably know all those names. Gary Boomer. Can't think who else. Jay Nisberg back in the day. And so I got to meet all of those people who knew a lot about managing CPA firms, and I learned from them. And eventually, they invited me to they had a group of consultants. I call them the old timers, including myself. It was called the New Horizon Group. It's still active today. The original members, most of them are not members anymore, but it was Mark Rosenberg, Chris Fredrickson, Don Scholl, Alan Colton, August Aquila, and I was the first female they invited into that group. So just some luck I had of knowing the right people. And I always tease Alan Colton. I knew him when he sold marketing materials. That was how he learned. That's how I met CPA firms. He sold marketing materials to CPA firms. So I've known him probably 30 years. And so it's just been a growing experience, but the core of it is I loved what I was doing. I always felt like it was my firm. I was proud of it. And I think that helped. And I had a pretty aggressive partner group that wanted to succeed and banded together.
Ready to eliminate frustrating spreadsheets and save countless hours each month? Jirav has created a strategic technology platform that delivers smarter financials and faster insights. Like each Jirav's unique spots, Jirav is different from others in the market. They've made financial forecasting and modeling affordable and accessible to accounting firms of any size. Jirav quickly integrates with your client's existing financial, HRIS, payroll, CRM, and other systems for a seamless experience to generate custom client dashboards and reports in minutes. Arm your clients with data to make better decisions faster and improve their bottom line. Jirav understands the challenges of modern accounting firms when it comes to building your advisory practice. As your partner, Jirav is with you every step of the way. They give you the technology platform, but also the training, technical skills, sales and marketing support, so you can confidently sell your new services. You'll benefit from best practices they've learned from working with over 300 accounting firms so that you can take your client advisory services to new heights. Book your demo today at giraffe.com/earmark to see how partnering with Jirav is a win for you and your clients. For a limited time, they'll send you a pair of their Tower Power socks for signing up. Offer available while supplies last in the US only. That's JIRAV.com/earmark. So your firm grew by acquisition, which is, I think, typical, right? Most CPA firms tend to grow that way.
If you want to grow faster, yes.
Yes. And your role as chief administrator or firm administrator, that was new, a newer idea, right?
Right.
So when you went to this conference, the MAP conference, Management of an Accounting Practice, that's what that stands for. You said it was mostly managing partners there. Were there many other administrators or COOs or no?
No.
Okay.
No, they weren't. When I went to the Missouri MAP conference, they invited me because what's a firm administrator do? They wanted me to enlighten them. How can it help firms? Which I continue to talk about to this day. It's taking all of that non-billable time away from partners. That's the secret to success if you want to grow your firm. Your partners have to be outward focused. They have to be helping clients, mentoring young people, bringing in new business. They don't need to be planning the company picnic or deciding what CPE the new hire goes to. They don't need to worry about payroll and, all the HR stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in smaller firms, the firm administrator, now they're calling that the CPA Firm Management Association has kind of rebranded, and they call that position practice manager now, which more descriptive. I think it really is what you do. And COO is still used quite a bit, if in firms, but it's someone who takes care of operations. So they make sure that the bills get paid. They make sure they wear many hats in most firms until you get to a certain size. Because, I was the firm bookkeeper. I was the tech person. I was the marketing director. I handled all those until we got big enough that we hired those positions. And then when I left the firm, my staff was 6 people, a controller, IT director, marketing director, HR director, and the IT, I think there were 4 people in IT at that time. So I feel like I could help them because I had filled their roles at one time or another, which helped with firm growth. So it was beneficial to me to have those experiences. And I think it helped the firm also grow.
Oh, yeah. Well, and we see this in medical practices. Like I feel like very few medical practices are actually run by doctors these days. You have professionals, right, who handle all the billing and who handle all of the technology, and then the experts can come in and see patients.
Exactly.
And similar, and like you said, you mentioned law practices. It's very common now for a legal practice to have an administrator, but it's not. Still, I feel like it's not necessarily all that common, especially with small firms, to have this role.
Well, in small firms, I call them working firm administrators. As our firm grew, there were times when I still had to be hands-on with various duties. And when you get to a certain size, and firms ask me this a lot, how big do you have to have a marketing director or an HR director? And, from my experience, you have to grow. So it's better to have that firm administrator or practice manager that can wear many hats, because that's what they need to do as the firm grows. And I had an admin team, 3 or 4 administrative people that did, tax assembly and all that. But when you get to a certain size, one person can't handle it all. And then in the larger firms, that role sort of gets diminished because you're so departmentalized. Most firms, probably under 70 people, they don't have a strict tax department and an audit department. The auditors have to come in and do tax. That's the way the smaller firms, you have to wear many hats as a staff person or as a manager. So it's same with the firm administrator. You wear many hats until you get big enough to have your own team of people that can help you. The sad thing is, so many of the firms that I've worked with over the years are gone. They've been acquired. I call them the bread and butter firms, the firms under 100 people, not the top 100 firms that have 0 to, and some of my clients are very small. And I think that's what I enjoy now, is helping those firms that don't have all those resources. So a firm under 10 people, they can't afford a firm administrator that really doesn't do work, So
is that true though? Because I feel like at that size, even with 10 people, if you've got partners and managers who are doing that work, it's not a great use of their time.
Oh, no, it's not. Yeah. No. And that's how it really grows, is when they decide, well, I shouldn't be doing this. But it's easy to say, Blake, but partners cling to things. And my story is about, I was always looking for, what can I take away from you, this non-billable? So, and it didn't mean just me. I would delegate it to the admin team. I didn't do all of it myself, but admin can take a lot away from partners. But some partners, believe it or not, they like to have an excuse for having non-billable time. So if I'm in charge of CPE, then I have to spend all this time planning that Sally's going to go to these 3 classes and Joe's going to go to those. It's all administrative work, So
you're saying that partners want to have a little buffer. They want to have this non-billable time, so they hold on to responsibilities that they should be giving to somebody who is all non-billable.
That's true
Interesting.
from what I have observed over many years, looking at many firms. And there's pressure on partners too. I mean, they can make the biggest difference. The more billable they are, I mean, they've got high billing rates, the more money's coming into the firm. So if they can not be bothered, but it's really some
Like
of
you said,
them.
it creates pressure.
Well, and they should be bringing in business, but so many partners aren't able to bring in business or they don't like it. That's probably what it is. They don't like to market and sell. That's that I didn't become an accountant to be a salesperson. When
Right.
marketing first hit this, I was there when marketing first came into vogue for CPA firms. It was prohibited way back before my time. They were not. They weren't.
When did that change? That was,
I don't know. It was before. It had to be a long time ago.
maybe
Probably
the
in the
60s or something,
in the
right?
50s or 60s, maybe.
Yeah.
But it wasn't too far behind when I joined because marketing was, oh my gosh, that was like a shock to them. We don't know what's that mean? What do we have to do? And of course, they were already doing a lot. They were networking, and then of course, digital world came into effect, and it's changed a lot more. I still think personal marketing is very successful for those that do it in their own communities.
It's a challenge, right? It's not comfortable. Like you said, most people don't go into accounting to do sales. It's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of what you like to do. I like to sit at my desk. I like to solve problems. I like working with clients, but in the context of helping them with their problems.
It's such a people business now, Blake. I mean, it's public accounting is a people business, but students that choose accounting for their career don't really know that. They like numbers. I wanted to be an engineer, but I couldn't quite make that, so I took accounting. I've heard that story many times. I kind of like working with numbers, so I went into accounting. They thought, well, I can sit at a desk all day and do numbers. It's what I love to do, especially tax people. They love tax. It's when you bring a client in face to face with them, it makes them nervous. I've heard them say that, oh, so and so's coming in to see me today. My stomach hurts when I have to sit down with a client. One tax partner told me once, So it's really those that have been able to bridge that to be not so technical, but to be more of a people person. Emotional intelligence, accountants are very low on that scale, understanding emotions and dealing with all that. And oh my gosh, there's lots of good stories about that when partners first had to deal with a female staff person crying. It happens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It happens. And I always told them it doesn't mean anything. And women can't help that. They just cry. They may not even be upset. They might, but it's hard for that type of personality. And that's what interests me now, as I've seen way back when I did a whole study on Generation X, because they were weird, Generation X, they wanted a little bit of flexibility. And then came the millennials.
That's me.
And I did a lot of study on the millennials. Now we got Gen Z. And it's just amazing to me that each generation, they say accounting firms are going to change when those Gen X get in control. Well, accounting firms are going to change when those millennials get in control. If you think about it, all those generations, they're still the accounting personality.
Right. Well,
they aren't that different.
People who don't fit, right? They leave. Is that what you're saying? Is that like, even though generations change over, the culture of public accounting kind of stays fairly the same?
Well, and those that do stay, because they have been raised by the veteran generation, then it was the baby boomers, and then it was Generation X. Well, they've been in that culture so long, but the time they get to a leadership role, they're pretty much just like their forebearers.
Right.
So it's not, you can't put people in those boxes anymore. And I always told that when I talked about generations in some of my presentations, it's all about dealing individual by individual, because you can have a young person that acts like a baby boomer.
Right.
if you go
Yeah.
by those descriptions, and a baby boomer that seems like a millennial. I mean, I haven't seen in all my years, you think I would have seen massive change in partner personalities. Haven't.
What about on the staff side? Has that changed?
That is changing more rapidly. And maybe this will finally be that push. I think COVID is the best thing that ever happened to CPA firms. I hate to say it. And the AICPA will tell you they thought it would take them probably 7 to 10 years to become completely paperless and remote. It happened in 2 or 3 weeks
Yeah.
because they had to. They just didn't want to. And there's still a lot of them that aren't. I cringe when I talk to firms that are not paperless.
Well,
They're still out there. And
yeah.
I tell them we went paperless in 1999.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look how many years ago that's been.
Well, there's an interesting split with the larger firms, like let's say over 100 people and sub 100, because if you're over 100, you've got the remote auditing capabilities. You kind of have to, right? Because you're multi-office, you're sending people around. It can't be location dependent. And so when I worked briefly at a large firm, a top 20 firm, 25 at the time, and everything I could work from home. I could work from anywhere. So when that firm when the pandemic hit, they had no problem with people not being in the office, right? And it sort of was like, it was just a mental shift, people not being there physically, but everything else already worked. But, for the smaller firms, you're saying that was where they struggled, like single office firms.
Yeah, the smaller firms, I mean, a lot of them didn't allow people to work from home, even up until 2020.
Yeah.
Certain people could work from home if they earned that right, if they had a sick kid, for example, or if we had a snowstorm or whatever, they could work from home. But not everyone had laptops. Not now. The only people that cannot work from home is the administrative staff. All through COVID, they were in offices scanning things to keep everybody busy, and they fought the battle firsthand.
Jirav chose the name Giraffe for a reason. Like the giraffe and its astounding height, their solution gives finance leaders the best 360-degree view possible so you can drive your clients' businesses forward with confidence and speed. Thinking about offering advisory services and don't know where to start? Jirav makes building your financial planning and advisory practice so much easier. Finding the right technology to efficiently offer your services is only part of the challenge. Often, the more daunting part is determining how to staff, price, package, and deliver services to clients. This is where Jirav shines. Not only do they offer the leading budgeting, forecasting, and planning technology solution, they've already empowered over 300 accounting firms with the training and resources needed to successfully build their advisory practices. What are you waiting for? Book your demo today at giraffe.com/earmark. That's JIRAV.com/earmark, and they'll send you a pair of their Tower Power socks. Offer available while supplies last in the US only.
So what's the thing that you think holds back firms from growth? Like, what's the number one problem?
Resistance to change.
Resistance to change? Like, what kind of resistance? Like, what are they resisting?
I got to have that paper in my hand. This is a big return. I can't do it on screen. Do you have 3 screens? Oh, we only have 2. Well, you need 3 if you're going to review tax. I got to have that paper. Well, we've always done it we've always done it this way, and it's working because they've been successful. Like CPAs in public practice, CPA partners are successful in spite of themselves.
Successful financially, right? But not in terms of having work-life balance, not in terms of having good family dynamics. I mean, the joke is, right, that like, sure, you can make partner and make $500,000 a year, but you're going to be divorced 3 times, right? You're not going to see your kids. So there's this devil's bargain that you have to strike, it feels like, to be quote unquote successful.
But that's partners, once you get to partner, you have it made. You're not there. And if you play golf on Friday, you have people doing the work for you. And that's been the carrot we've held out there for so many years. When you get to partner, you can,
Right.
it gets better.
Is that true? Is it better? I mean, I feel like people would be happier if it was better.
Well, again, you got the accountant, and you must not be a typical accountant, but
No,
they love what
I'm
they
the
do.
opposite.
They love what they do.
Yeah.
They're doing it. They're not efficiently, profitably. They're doing it profitably.
Right.
They're making lots of money doing what they love. And that's why, the younger people, they want that balance. The older people, they want to keep working. They get to that stage where their kids have probably grown up. And I mean, I've got clients where they have partners that just won't let go, won't just ride off into the sunset, which discourages the younger people.
Well, and that's that stat the ICPA puts out every now and then, where it's something like 75% of CPAs are eligible for retirement. And like, that's now. And the younger generation just isn't interested in this path where it's, you got to put in your 10, 20 years of sweat, right? And then there's this promise land of partnership. But like, how many millennials, especially how many Gen Zers, want to work for the same company for their entire career? Like,
that's right? True. That's what's hurting the CPA profession. They need to change. They need to rebrand themselves, in my opinion. I think, and if I could wave a magic wand, the partnership model, that should go away. I don't think makes sense, really. People don't want to work 10 to 15 years before they, get the payoff. They don't want to they don't want that debt of retiring out the older partners. I mean, that's why all these merger happens. Those young people are smart. Why do we take on that debt? We've got 3 old guys that we're going to be paying big bucks to retire them out. So, I mean, it is changing for the better, but I think it's going to have to change the business model, because people, not everybody wants to climb that ladder. Back in the 80s and 90s, even into 2000s, that was, here's the step ladder. That's what you wanted to do. We wanted everybody to work your way up. You can be partner, although you knew they weren't going to, not all of them. We didn't think about, well, it's okay to have people working if they want to work at a senior level for 20 years. What's wrong with that? If they love what they do.
Yeah. What do you think is going to replace the partner model?
Oh boy. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, it's just any kind of small business model, I guess. You have owners and you have employees.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have that pressure of climbing the ladder. You fill the slots with the people that are capable, and those people get paid well for whatever level they're on, whatever type of work they do. And there's not that ceiling so much. You're working for a small business owner. You're not working for 10 partners.
Yeah. Well, and we see that in the space that I operate in, or I had my business in, this cloud accounting space, virtual firms. We see a lot of firms pop up that aren't CPA firms. There's a corporate model. You have the CEO, maybe you have investors. And so I would say probably like half the firms that I talk to on a regular basis are under that model now.
Right.
And I'm curious, like, if it will scale up, right? There's a firm that just entered the top 100 list for the first time, Accounting Today's top 100 firms list, Your Part-Time Controller. And they're not a partnership. And that name doesn't sound like a CPA firm, right? They are a business that provides controller services to not-for-profits. And they've got like 400 employees.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense to me. Really. It makes sense.
But I guess
for that, I don't know about the audit. What do you think about the audit, E&Y, and their split off of their audit
practice? Yeah. Well, it's interesting because in researching it, or in learning about it, I found out that this has happened before. The Big Four, 30 years ago, I don't know how many years ago, decades ago, grew consulting practices. And then everybody but was it Deloitte, split them off after Enron.
Yeah, I think it was Deloitte.
I think Deloitte held on to it, but the others, split it off. And I think one became Accenture, right? Like, and one got bought by IBM. It might've been, I can't remember, but like this has happened before. And so I'm wondering if like, is EY splitting apart, because they just had this $100 million cheating scandal, and they've had the Wirecard audit failure. And there was with that entity in China, the Luckin Coffee, and like they've been the audit partners have not been helping with the brand of EY. Let's just say that over the last few years. And so my theory is that it's like the consulting partners want to just put that as behind them and not have to, be a part of that. Right. It's not a good look, but I don't know. It could just be like everybody wants to take private equity money and, or IPO and make a bunch of money. Right. Like it could be that. I don't know. What do you think?
Could be. Yeah, I think it could be that. It is kind of a repeat. Back in, I guess it was the 90s, a lot of firms were purchased by, I know in Indianapolis was purchased by a bank. And of course, they had to split off the audit section. But it was really all in one office pretty much, but they had to split that out, and it worked successfully. And then there was, American Express was buying all those firms, and that was such a big deal, but so it's I don't know whether it's really going to catch on quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting thinking about like the future of our profession, because so much of what we do these days doesn't require the CPA license. And you can do tax, you can do consulting, you can do accounting. We call it CAS. AICPA likes to call it CAS. I like to call it just accounting, because that's what it is, right?
Oh, it's been a big moneymaker for a lot of firms. CAS has, yeah.
But it's tough when you've got these old, I want to say old, but just like traditional business model. It's hard to fit that into that model and that hierarchy. And, I started out as a bookkeeper, and in bookkeeping doesn't get respect. I'm like Rodney Dangerfield, right? Get no respect here.
But you learned a lot, right?
Yeah, I did. And I love it. It's my favorite thing. I love doing the books. And that was what my practice did. We did the books. But when I got into the larger firm, it was hard to get respect and get the resources you need, because here we are, we're just bookkeepers, right? Even though we were trying to raise that up, we were still in the mind of the tax and the audit partners, like second-class citizens.
Oh, I imagine.
I never liked that. What was it like being a woman in accounting when you said you were like one of two women at this event that you went to, this management of an accounting practice event? Like, what was that like?
Well, I've thought a lot about that over the years. Why did I enjoy it? Why did I do well at it? For years, I was the only woman in partner retreats, partner meetings. And in my consulting, I mostly worked with men. I think I was comfortable with that because I was a tomboy. I grew up in a neighborhood of boys.
Mm-hmm.
And guess who the ringleader was? Me. I could boss them around. I could beat them up. I had an older brother, and his friends, he was 5 years older than me, and his friends picked on me relentlessly, and teased me. And I just was used to that boy culture, I let things roll off my back. Men and women are, I know everybody says we have to be treated equal. You're not equal. You're not the same. There's lots of differences. And I probably shouldn't say this, I would rather manage men than a group of women. Drama. Have you ever managed a group of females?
So in my firm, yeah, it was mostly women who we hired to do the bookkeeping work. Yeah. I think our firm was like, 80% women.
Well, I've seen partners get into a heated discussion in a partner meeting. Almost I'm pretty hot, lose their tempers somewhat, and then they go play golf,
Right.
On my admin team, they wouldn't speak to each other for 2 weeks. It's just, it's not good, bad. It's just different in general. And I'm just talking generalities. You can't pigeonhole women and men, but it's just, I think I don't know. I just kind of was give and take. I didn't get upset as easy. I could stand my ground pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think that helped me survive through those years. Because if I'd have been a different personality, and I'm not I've always thought of myself as kind of shy, really. I was shy before I got into public speaking and all of that. But I think it just helped me kind of being around boys when I grew up and around men. I didn't have any trouble fitting in. I guess they didn't worry they would offend me or anything. So I was more accepted. I wasn't going to break down and cry.
And you mentioned, that instance where you had a partner who, did they make a staff person cry and then they didn't know what to do?
They don't know what to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the whole that is a great topic in accounting firms, the male-female dynamic and how to really make it work better and get along better. Used to do a whole presentation on that because understanding the differences, what sometimes a male will say something and he's not intending to hurt anybody's feelings. And sometimes a woman reacts differently, not realizing, it's just difference in the gender differences.
So we still have this big imbalance in firms between partners and staff when it comes to gender diversity. Staff now, it's actually more women than men are entering accounting. And you look at most firms, and the large firm that I was in briefly, it was definitely more women on the staff side. But then you look at the partners and they're 80% men.
It's been that way for many years. Even I was trying to think when I first started, I think there was probably about the same women with men. But as I went into the 80s and 90s, definitely more females. In most firms I talk to, there's more females. But we lose them. I think that's why more men become partners, because the female, she has to make a choice. I want to start a family. Do I want to work those long hours? Firms still have a heavy tax season. I think that's why flexibility, I'm hoping flexibility keeps more females in the profession. I always counsel them, take a year or two off, but then come back. I think that's a real plus of being a CPA, being in the accounting world. You can take a couple of years off and come back and pick up and go right on. You've got those skills, why they should become a CPA, because that sticks with you, So I think it's starting maybe to change with the flexibility. Now, I don't know. What do you think about the flexibility, Blake? I mean, to me, sometimes I feel like the firms are bending over backwards. Who's the boss?
Well, I think it's what kind of flexibility are you really offering? If you're just letting people work from home, but you're still requiring them to work the crazy hours, like why is it? I always wondered, why is it necessary for us to work these insane hours during busy season? Like busy season is the root of a lot of evil in our profession.
We blame it on the government. We blame it on the government.
We blame it on the government. But
I like these due dates,
Right. But it's like, we don't have to take on so much work. We could choose, like you said, accounting's very profitable, right? So we could choose not to work so many hours and we could probably still make a good living.
I agree with that.
Right.
I agree.
And the partner,
or you could have more staff people. Maybe not right now. We can't find them. But I always thought, why not have 2 extras? And our firm would do that. We would show our staff we're staffed at 110% compared to last year, because we didn't want them to have to work 80-hour weeks or 70-hour weeks. Our cap, it was still a lot of hours. But I think it's the partners are used to making a lot of money. So if they want to hire more people, their salaries are going to go down.
Yeah.
Unless,
well, it's a leverage model, right? Like,
right.
And you grow generally by hiring people and filling them up with billable time. And I mean, I think part of the problem part of the problem is the hourly billing model really forces you, if you want to be profitable as a firm, to abuse your people, right? To use them, literally use them, utilize them as much as you possibly can. And so then if somebody wants to take like a reduced schedule and work 30 hours a week because they want to raise a family, it's not, it's not conducive.
But
You
I
make
think that's changing, don't you? I think it's changing from what I see.
I think there's definitely now, right?
Firms are allowing them
shortage,
pretty much to whatever they ask for, really.
But you're still saying to those people, you're like basically knocking them off the partner track, right? So there's this choice that has to be made, right? If you don't want to put in the hours, you can't advance.
And we go back to the model must change then.
Yeah.
Why do I want to be a partner? Can I have a good career and a job? And, not everybody needs to be a partner.
So for me personally, like I feel like I empathize a lot, or at least sympathize a lot. I don't know which is the right word, with, women who do work in accounting and then want to have children, because like my wife and I, the original plan when we had our son was she was going to stop working and I was going to be the breadwinner, like classic situation. We were going to have 2.5 kids, a dog, right? 2-car garage, all that stuff. Right. And then she went on maternity leave, and like 2 weeks into it, she called me. I was at the office. This is when I was working at the firm. I was like sitting in my office. Calls me, she's like, I can't do this, Blake. I can't do this for the rest of my life. Like, she realized very quickly that what she had envisioned as motherhood wasn't for her, and that she really, really missed work and wanted to work. And so we had to rejigger everything, right? And I actually, on the opposite side, I realized once Thomas got to be like a year old, our son, I love doing the dad stuff. I love being that parent who picks him up from school, right? And it flipped. So I'm now the one, right, who wants to spend the time. Like, if I could, actually, I joke about this, but I mean, I'm not really joking about it. If I could, I would totally be the stay-at-home dad. Yeah, I would. I actually really, that fits my personality a lot, and I guess that's why podcasting is, a good career for me.
But that's unusual. That's not the norm.
No, it's not the norm.
No,
it's not. Like, so for me, I see myself trying to fit into a CPA firm, and like it does not compute the the requirements to like be successful as a partner.
But would you have to be a partner? Say if you were in the right firm and you had the flexibility, would you?
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's what needs to change, right? It's the up or out mentality of firms is kind of like.
It has changed a lot.
Yeah.
It has changed a lot. It used to be, I mean, that was always the big four model, up or out,
Well,
and we'd get those dropouts.
Yeah.
But the dropouts from the big four are so unequipped to survive in a small firm. We tried to hire big four dropouts. Our people that we had from college level on could outperform, run circles around them, because our people were exposed to tax and audit and accounting and bookkeeping and plumbers and excavators and dentists and doctors. The big four person came in and they'd been on the GE audit for 5 years. Just didn't work. I mean, they had to start from scratch, and they felt, I'm from the big four,
Right. I'm a big deal.
I'm a big deal.
I deserve the money, the prestige, but you don't really know how to do the stuff that a small firm needs.
And that takes a while. And some have been very successful. Some big four partners have started their own firms but most of the ones that I've met along the years, they weren't at the big four a long time. A couple years, maybe, kind of the in and out thing to get it on their resume.
Yeah. So that's a problem for public accounting, because firms used to be willing to invest a lot in their hires, but when the hires don't stick around like they used to, why would you invest all that time to train that person? And so now we're in this strange situation where, the universities aren't preparing accountants to do this work. The firms don't want to invest in training them. So where do you learn the skills? It's sort of a trial by fire thing. You got to be able to do it yourself.
Well, what us consultants always tell people is, they hate to spend the money on training. What if we train them and they leave? Well, what if you don't train them and they stay?
Yeah.
That's because that's what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
You don't train them and they stay. And then one time I talked to, I don't know, some group I was talking to, and I said, if you have a person that's not performing well, be honest with them, counsel them and talk to them and give them 1 or 2 years. And one partner raised his hand and said, oh, we give them about 8 years of failing before we finally fire them. Because accountants, CPAs, they don't like to fire people either.
Yeah.
They don't like that interaction.
I've had to do it, and it's probably the worst thing. It's the worst feeling for me. Like, I hate it. So I get that.
That's what I talked about that old-time partner that I grew up under when he named me office manager. I think that was my title. He said, you'll never be successful until the people you work with, the other administrative people, you won't be successful till they're gone. He said, because they won't look at you with respect. And he just said that one day, and it pretty much turned out that way. But he called me in. He had to fire an admin person. Back then, we were only 9 people. He counseled everybody. And he said, I want you to sit in. I'm going to fire, can't remember her name, Susie. And after that was over, he said, now you know what it's like to be a boss. And it was painful, just for me observing and kind of sitting there. I mean, I felt awkward anyway, but it was my introduction to firing people. And it is not pleasant,
No.
And I always like to tell the story of, we had some tech people once. A tech guy wasn't doing well. And one day I called him in. I said, I want to talk to you right after lunch. And he came in and he said, I know what you're going to say. You're going to let me go, aren't you? And that's what you want. You want them to know. You don't want them to be surprised.
Right.
So when you're managing your people, never let them be surprised. And recognize your all-stars. If you have, I don't know about the firm you were in, but so many firms, they don't want to show favoritism. So if we give so-and-so a bonus, we better give the others a smaller bonus. Or, if we give them, they can only work 4 days a week, we better offer that to everybody else because they'll be upset. And the all-stars, I think you need to give them perks. You need to recognize them. You need to grow them. That's your future. And if somebody complains and says, well, I didn't get that, then explain to them how they can become an all-star. Don't shy away from that. CPAs don't get that at all.
Well, so funny story. The way I ended up leaving the big firm was I got an unsolicited offer to go join a technology company. And it was for like 60% more than I was making at this firm that I had joined as a manager. And I brought it to them and I said, look, here's this offer that I got. I mean, I got to take it. Right. And they said, oh, let us figure it out. And they couldn't, there was no mechanism in the firm to like accelerate my development, to, put me on a clearer path to partnership, to give me anything in exchange for what this tech company was offering. Right.
Sad.
And so they lost me, right? So 8 months after they hired me. And I mean, I understand, right? It's just like, the business model doesn't allow for it, or the culture of the firm doesn't allow for that kind of thing. If they had done that for me, it probably would have made all the other managers furious, right? And
they don't want to deal with confrontation.
Yeah.
They, even in partner groups, in the meetings, they will, if you get on you've probably never been in a partner retreat, but at these partner retreats, you get everything out on the table. And when you bring up the tough discussion, about half of them, I say they look at their laps. They won't speak up and engage. So when after so many years of that, it's just too uncomfortable. So even, if 2 admin people are chatting too much at the front desk, they go to somebody else and say, can you talk to Sally and Brenda? They talk too much. Well, why don't you talk to them? You just walk by there.
Right.
They want to deflect that. They'll pick the person in the firm, and usually it's the firm administrator. Can you go talk to so-and-so, whether it's a staff person or an admin person or even another partner? They'll send you to talk to them.
How much of your job, I could totally see that. How much of your job was just fixing these interpersonal dynamics inside the firm because they wouldn't do it themselves?
My job, when I left the firm, my job was talking to people. That's about all I did, was talk to people and smooth over things and bring things to light and be the bridge between the staff and the partners, and often between partner to partner, being that bridge to kind of enhance the communication and soften it if it needed be, to maybe strengthen it. I mean, it's all about communication. And every firm I go into, Blake, they're having problems. They want you to fix, come in, bring your magic wand and fix this. It boils down to communication. It's not open enough. It's not clear enough. When a new person, a bright young person comes into the firm, you need to have that career path documented and explainable to that person. Like if you could see where your future was going and how soon you might get there, would help you make a decision.
Definitely would have helped me.
Mhm.
If I'd had that. If they said, look, don't take this offer. I know they're going to pay you way more, but if you follow this path, you will get to there. I might have stayed,
Mhm. Mhm.
like, because I wanted control too, right? I wanted the ability to decide what technology my team would be using. But as a manager, I had no control. The tech team, the IT team would only do what you wanted, really, if you were a partner, because the partners had the power, right?
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's
So,
so true. That is so true. Yes.
I mean, so for me, yeah, being a manager, I think is, and just my personal experience, was one of the most frustrating things because I had all the responsibility with none of the authority. And I couldn't even really manage people because I didn't have the authority to hire or fire on my own either.
See, yeah.
And that's the way it is in most firms, right? If you're not a partner, you don't get to do that.
Well, it depends.
Yeah.
I felt like our managers, when you get to a certain size, the managers have a lot of say in that. The partners don't. The managers really manage the people, so they get a lot more. Was it a fairly large firm? Did you say it was?
Top 25. Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Yeah. So
surprised that you didn't.
1,000 staff, 100 partners
Oh my
at the
gosh!
time.
Yeah,
But again, it was
a
like, I was not in the home office. I was in the LA office.
okay.
And I think that also makes a difference.
Oh, there's a lot of
Right.
politics. Yeah.
I was in the office that was a firm that had been acquired several years prior, but still, even when you slap a new logo on the building, it's still, in transition.
Well, and that's the issue, that I worry about with all these mergers that have gone on. When we acquired somebody the first time that we made a sizable acquisition, we were worried about losing clients. We don't want to lose any clients. And we lost people. So the second time, we focused a whole lot more on keeping the staff and not so much. I think we lost one client,
Mhm.
but we lost 5 people. So we really revamped and redirected our acquisition model to focus on the people coming in, to sign them, get them hooked up with a buddy, let them tour our office before they actually move in. And we did it the one firm way. And I often talk about, are you a one firm or you are a silo firm?
Tell me
And
more about that.
Okay, a one firm, which we always strive to be, is that there's one way to do things, processes and procedures. If you're doing it for Joe partner, it's done the same way for Tom partner.
Mhm.
So many firms, whichever partner you're working for, you do it their way.
Yeah.
Think how inefficient that is in training people. And I always tell the intern story. I love to take interns to lunch after they've been there a month or so. I take them out to lunch. They could imitate the partners. They could tell you which ones, well, if you're doing that for Jim, you better not put that work paper in there. But if you're doing it for Ted, you better have 2 of those. So if you're a one firm, it's all the same. And we tried to maintain that as we acquired so that we could use our people. And our offices were in driving distance. It was Indiana, Dayton, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. So we could move people around because it was done the same way. And that is the one firm. It's the CPA firm way. In a silo firm, it's like band of guys sharing expenses.
They share the brand, they share the team, the staff. Well, even sometimes the staff are like very siloed in that kind of firm,
often.
right? Yeah.
And that is, but, and I tell firms, if you want to be a silo firm, that's fine, but admit it.
Right.
Don't fool your people saying we're a one firm when they know better, because but it's more efficient with training, with new people coming in, with profitability. If everything's done the same way, people get better at it, better and better. So just declare what you are and then move on. I don't care what you're the owners. You pick whichever model you want, but don't say you're a one firm if you're not.
Well, Rita, this has been a real pleasure. I have really enjoyed talking to you and learning about your experience and you just have this amazing breadth of knowledge about management of firms. And we clearly need that as a profession. It's better management. So I believe you are a consultant to firms. You speak on this topic. Like, where can people learn more about what you do and follow you?
Just go to ritakeller.com. I'm very proud of the fact, Blake, that I have been writing a blog daily for 17 years.
Wow.
So every business day for 17 years on CPA firm management, one topic. So you can go to my website and it'll say categories, and you can select communication or leadership or a lot of different recruiting, people, HR, and you can read blogs on that topic. You can also you can go back to 2009 or 10 and look up what was I blogging about back then. So it's a resource. And I recommend people that are new firm administrators, new managing partners, go out and just take advantage of that blog, because it has a lot of helpful hints and keeps you in the news. You can sign up. It'll come to your mailbox every day. Do you read it, Blake?
I am subscribing right now.
Okay. Never subscribe on there. So you'll get an email every day. And then I send out a monthly newsletter. And what I do now, I'm advisory and coaching for CPA firm management. So most of my clients are actually managing partners. They range in size from, I think the smallest is 4 people. The largest is about 35. So it's a range in that. I've worked for some of the larger firms, but mostly with those types of firms that really, some of them I've helped firms get ready to be acquired. The acquirers are kind of picking out who they want to bring in. And the secret is working for clients that you really enjoy.
Yeah. I think actually
being very selective, adding new clients.
That is so important too, because it makes the staff happy, right? The staff, and this is a younger generation thing, is that we want to have purpose and meaning, right? I don't know how true that is, but that's sort of like I think everybody wants purpose and meaning, right? And when you're working with happy clients, it's fun, right?
I tell CPAs, we go through this agony of we have to outplace the bottom 10%. Every year we should outplace the bottom 10%. And deciding who should go, I said, just send a survey to your staff, say, give me names of 3 clients that should not be clients. And the staff will tell you. It's the ones that are messy, that are argumentative. They know who it is. Just let your staff decide. I don't think anybody will do that, but I wish they would.
That would be great. I mean, you could have a contest, right? Do a little like Survivor contest for your staff, and they get to vote
somebody off the island.
Why not, right?
Good
that would be
idea.
a great party. You could have a theme. Everybody gets or it could be like Bachelor. Everybody gets a rose. You get to
I like
pick
that.
Your Rita, thank you so much for your time today. This was a pleasure, and hope to talk to you again soon.
I enjoyed talking to you anytime. Thanks, Blake.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you learned something new. And if you did, wouldn't it be nice to get some CPE credit for it? Well, I've got great news. My new app, Earmark CPE, offers free NASBA-approved CPE credits for listening to podcasts, including this one. Visit earmarkcpe.com to download the app, take a short quiz, and get your CPE certificate. That's earmarkcpe.com.